And I have the pleasure of introducing Pam Peeke, who we had the pleasure of hosting in Miami at our forum. Pam is a force of nature. Her bio goes on and on, so I'm not going to read it to you. She is a nationally renowned physician and scientist and an expert in the fields of nutrition and fitness. And she is a best-selling New York Times author. Her most recent book is The Hunger Fix. And in that, she explains the new science of food, addiction, and epigenetics. She serves as the senior science advisor at the Elements Behavioral Health Center, which is one of the country's largest addiction and eating disorders treatment centers. And there she is now pioneering first programs to tackle addictive eating behaviors. Now, if that wasn't enough, Pam is also a triathlete. I am not going to be training with you, I have to tell you. She was just named to the board of the National Senior Olympics, and she's qualified, something that I also think I will not do for 2015. Thank you, Pam, for joining us.
It's time to eat. And this is why I'm brought in right before lunch, to make you think. What I'm going to be doing is, once again, bringing a lot more of this together. We've been building and building and building. And we've been looking at new ways of thinking. We have been exploring consciousness. We've been looking at addiction, per se. Now I'm going to try to bring a lot of this together and then turn you on to yet another new science. How many of you have heard about epigenetics? Oh, God, that's right, it's Aspen. I forgot. I was in Columbus, Ohio last week, and 3 hands went up. All right, fine, be that way. I'm now going to present this along with some very exciting news about relating food and addiction. And you know, it's interesting. We're into storytelling and music and all the rest of this. It's sort of none of us knew what our PowerPoints looked like when we were rolling through this. And yet we're all building on each other. We've got music, we've got all kinds of fun things going on. And we're all inspired by something. So my story is straightforward. I'm an athlete, and I was training in a master's swim program that I had just begun at Bethesda Naval. I'm in Bethesda, Maryland. You know that Walter Reed and Bethesda Naval now are combined. And I came one day with a seriously bad attitude. Sometimes nothing but BMW comes out of your mouth. Bitch, moan, and whine. You know, it's just, my legs feel like lead, and I probably won't be able to swim, and I've got a, torture freak for a master's swim coach, and I don't know. And so I popped in the water, and I'm doing, my laps. This is the way she always starts everything. First, we're going to start with an easy 700 meters. That's your warm-up. Oh, God. And so I'm into it, and deep in my mind I'm doing, and then I'm looking over in the next lane. And next lane is a young man. And this young man is tootling along, and he's killing me here. And he's really keeping up a fabulous pace. And he was just doing his thing, and I'm kind of still doing my little BMW. And then finally we ended up finishing our warm-up. And he came up to the side and he said, oh gosh, I gotta go. And as he came up, I realized, well, he was a vet. And we had a long conversation when I met him. I didn't have a single complaint after meeting Alan, who is my Daniel. As we sat there, I helped him put his prosthesis on, and we were talking about his life. And turns out the other lanes were filled with more Allens. And these people all coalesced. We all sat around. They found out I was a physician, and they looked at me and they said, can you help us with something? And I said, listen, honey, if you can teach me how to swim like that, I'll help you with anything. And I've never been that humbled. And they said, yeah, we've all had addiction issues as we've come out of the war. And we're really struggling. We're struggling with PTSD. We're struggling with getting into recovery and trying to clean it up. And as we're doing that, we're finding that we're just getting addicted to other stuff. And I said, well, what do you mean? They had no idea what I did for my living as a professional. And they said, I don't know, we just keep eating weird things. And I said, like what? And they said, well, you know, Cheetos and all the other stuff and back and forth. They were not mentioning apples or arugula. They said that when we see this stuff, we feel the same way as we did when we were on Coke and the rest of it. Now, you see, as a physician and a scientist in this field, I've been watching this for 20 years. And I've been thinking to myself, along with all the other experts, it's really something, a relationship between specific, I can't even grace them with the word food, so I'll do what Michael Pollan says, and that is call them food-like products, or what I like to call science fair projects. There's nothing natural about a Twinkie. There are 3 forms of rock in it, 2 forms of petroleum, and that white stuff is not cream. I don't know what the hell it is. All I know is it doesn't melt in a 1,000-degree oven. This should worry you. And they said, yeah, can you help us with, I told them what I do, and they said, are you kidding me? I mean, you know, coincidences are God's way of acting anonymously. And they put it all together. And this is one of the things, you know, they said, well, how can we help you? I said, well, you know, I've been named to the national board of the Senior Olympics. And they said, well, why don't you try out for it? And I said, And then they said, if we can swim, you can swim. Which is why I tried out for it, and which is why I just qualified 2 weeks ago. And they're all coming to Minneapolis to watch me. We got a lake waiting for me. So all of it comes together. Isn't it interesting? So when we look at certain foods, remember what Dr. Volkol said. By the way, Dr. Volkol is one of my neighbors in Bethesda. She is my hero. I consider her the CEO of addiction, and I kind of see myself as a COO, meaning that I'm taking this science and I'm applying it in some very, very exciting new platforms to be able to help people. Because epidemiologic studies now show is 1 in 5 have this issue, a very strong hook with specific foodstuffs, the hyperpalatables, the sugary, fatty, salty foods. Because it's interesting, as I'll show you, I have props that I got from the snack we just had. What did Dr. Volkol say about the banana? Well, when you have a banana and you have that tastes really good, and I had a really good memory over this. This is the level of reward you get. It's really great. Kale's about here, just kidding. So banana, soup it up a little bit, it's right about there. And so we're at the banana level. So, but have you ever heard anyone say, oh man, I had one of these, I gotta have 28 more, I'm gonna do bananas in the corner. You know, it just doesn't, my God, she was arrested doing bananas in her driveway. No, it just doesn't work that way. However, I did a TEDx for Wall Street that Glenda attended. And this was a very interesting experience as I sat there with 500 hedge fund founders and all the rest of it. And as one young man, after I had done a similar talk, came up to me afterwards and he said, you know, it's interesting, I got off the alcohol. There is a beautiful, very expensive bar every 10 feet on Wall Street. And I got off the cigarettes. So you think the 11 Red Bulls are a problem? He says, it's harder getting off those than it is the other stuff. He says, is there something to that, or is it I'm just undisciplined and I just don't know what I'm doing? So when Alan and all of his pals, who I meet with now on a weekly basis, and I'm coaching them with exactly the same kind of new blueprint in epigenetics and nutrition that you're going to see. It's really kind of fun. And then we're doing this large scale with the Elements Behavioral Group as we're developing a national platform looking at nutrition and addiction as we're looking at recovery and detox. What are we doing here? Cross addictions. That's what Alan hears every single time he sees this. I took this picture at O'Skare Airport one day when I was walking around. And what was interesting was, of course, it was one of the typical days. It was winter or some godforsaken thing. And they changed my gait countless times. I was getting aerobic exercise, dragging my rolly behind me. And then I came across this gigantic placard. And this placard said, "Come closer." So, oh, this is creepy. So I came closer like an idiot, like all the 28 people behind me. And it said, "Can you smell it? It's waiting for you." And what the hell? And meanwhile, so, like a sheeple, I went around with, and now 50 people were behind me. We're all following this thing. And there were 3 more. And it says, "You're almost there." I thought, Jesus, what is it? So I turned the corner. It was a Starbucks. And all the pastries were gone. See, remember what Dr. Volkol said? It was the cue. It's the cue and the trigger. It's that Pavlovian cue and trigger that got him going. He doesn't look at this. When Alan looks at this, he hears cocaine all over again. He just cross-addicted. Is that really humanly possible to do? Absolutely. So the rats and the Oreos say. So Connecticut College published a fabulous piece, which was done back in October. I actually did an ABC Nightline on this. It was a riot. And what they did was they took rats, and using a brand new model, they basically exposed them to morphine and to cocaine, and put them through a variety of maze experiments. And of course they went for the morphine and cocaine like there was no tomorrow. This was followed eventually by epigenetic studies looking at lighting up of that specific part of the reward center using one particular gene called C5. And what they said was, well, this is very interesting. Obviously it lit up because it's morphine and cocaine. Why wouldn't it light up? It's the reward center, just like Dr. Volkol said. But what happened if we put a little cookie in there too? And they only used Oreo because they knew this was going to hit it with the media. So, hey, listen, I got through Berkeley, 3 degrees there on Oreos. So I got great respect for this cookie. So they gave him the cookie, and the first thing they found, which was absolutely a scream, was the rats actually tore it apart and went for the filling. Yes. I mean, they have this video, and I thought they were pulling my leg. I said, really? Come on, it's a rat. No, rats aren't stupid. They're going right for the filling. A little hyper-palatable thing that they are. And of course, they were put through the same mazes, and then they looked at how much the reward center had been lit up. And son of a gun, you want to raise your hand? Was it lit up less than morphine and cocaine? Was it lit up at the same level? Was it lit up at a higher level? Yeah, man, that's why we got through college. So there you have it. We were hooked. And then this was followed by some beautiful work done by Suraj Ahmed and others in a fabulous textbook called Food and Addiction, which came out a month, thank you, Jesus, before my book, the consumer book, sometimes you'll luck out, The Hunger Fix. And in that, he showed, again, using a rodent model, that refined sugar is more addictive than cocaine. And we have to keep that in mind. I'm not demonizing anything. I'm simply educating you. Whatever you want to do with that is your problem. But just think about that for a second. Now, then, of course, we go back to public policy. What are we doing to our children? I could go on. You get the point, right? All right, so there's the issue. Is it really humanly possible? Well, don't these look familiar from Nora's work? Now we're adding one other category, and that is someone who fits the criteria for what we now refer to as food addiction, and that's the Yale Food Addict scale. And what you're actually looking at is a cocaine, and in this case it could be any addict, a cocaine addict in this particular experiment being compared to someone who fits criteria for food addiction, and you see indistinguishable changes between both of them in the reward center, if you remember what we saw before, which was whether or not these two individuals, these two categories, light up at all, can they bind that receptor? Can that person feel pleasure? The answer is no, because those receptors have been downregulated. Why? To help you not feel so overstimulated. By doing so, you start the entire addiction cycle. So when this was published by Dr. Volkol and her team, it was a game changer. It was an absolute total game changer. Blew everyone's mind. They said, say what? Because everyone did this with nutrition. Really, seriously? I remember when I began to work in the addiction field that I would walk up to one of the leaders in the field, headed up one of the biggest treatment center networks. And I said, so what do you do with nutrition when these people are coming off all kinds of combinations of everything? They said, who cares? Let them eat birthday cake. At least they're not robbing banks. I said, you need to start reading some research. And then we had Dr. Volkol's work, and it was just absolutely phenomenal. It's a game changer. Now we realize you can't say that anymore. And so what we're doing with Elements is we're the first big group to actually turn this whole thing around and say, whoa, nutrition is huge here. And it's a lifesaver. It will prolong, hopefully forever, a successful recovery and decrease relapse. This is the data that we're beginning to collect in our early work with Elements. The same thing we see in binge eating. By the way, binge eating, in binge eaters, you see precisely the same pattern. And binge eating is the #1 disordered eating and chaotic eating. And the grand majority of people don't even fit criteria. They're on the launch pad. It's called almost there, right? And that's the grand majority of people. When you pack on a few, honey, you're not eating a boatload of kale. It's the hyperpalatables, sugary, fatty, salty food combinations, the grand majority of which are refined, processed, and manufactured. So let's look at epigenetics. The holy grail forever was DNA is destiny. You're stuck. I listened to Alan and his guys saying, I'm screwed. My mother was an alcoholic. I'm screwed because, I have so much addiction in my own family back and forth. I said, not so fast. Turns out, this is only a small piece of the action. And we found this out through playing around with epigenetics. So I'll tell you a tale of kale. God, I hope it's for lunch, Glenn, to tell me there's a little kale there. All right, so got to coordinate these things. So you were told you are what you eat, right? You are what you eat. Haven't you been told that? Some people listen, some people don't. Gets ugly. All right, then all of a sudden we have tons of data coming in now, basically saying, for crying out loud, what you eat is affecting everything. If a mother eats a specific way, we run into a problem. If the father eats a specific way, we run into a problem, and there you have it. So what is all this about? This means that we have to start paying attention to epigenetics. Now, what is that? These are beautiful fat cells that I took a picture of in my laboratory. They actually look like big soap bubbles. So now you can look at what they look like a little bit deeper. And we said, are there ways to be able to take whatever our ancestors gave us in our genes, not change the gene, but change the gene expression? The answer was absolutely yes. And this was born of the agouti mice. A-G-O-U-T-I. They have the agouti gene, which the biomarker is yellow fur. They also have obesity. They die early from cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Kind of a bum life. And so Dr. Randy Girdle at Duke University was playing around one day, and he said, I know where the gene is. I wonder if I can actually play with it. If there's a way to be able to dampen it, silence it, work with it, one way or the other. So he fed these particular mice who were going to go on to have pups. What do you think he fed them? You got it. Greens, a lot of those B vitamins, and there you have it. All right, I'm going to take longer. So, all right, so there we go. So what do you think happened when he fed the mothers this instead of the usual slop? What do you think happened? I don't know, it's always a crapshoot when you do science. Well, by the grace of God, a miracle took place. And the babies were born lean, brown, live forever. Then they went in to see what happened to the gene. The gene, well, he hit a home run on this one. was an A-Rod moment. He hit 100% clamp down on that gene. And all he did was feed him a couple. Can you imagine if he had them meditating and exercising and everything? They'd be unbelievable, be the master race. No, but, so this was the birth, and this was actually published in 2007. So this just happened yesterday, and we're now just beginning to apply it. And so I actually am going to whip right through this. No, let's not look at that. Genetics may load the gun. Epigenetics pulls the trigger. Now, what does that mean? What it means is, and don't ever forget this, tattoo this to your brain. Every thought, every mouthful, every movement changes gene expression, alters your destiny, and transforms your mind-body. All right? Every time you laugh, within nanoseconds, you have changes in gene expression that we're now beginning to measure. This is so exciting. When you move, when you do physical activity, I could take the worst gene for obesity, the FTO gene. I can have these people who have the gene fully expressed. I have them do nothing more than walk for 6 months. I come back, I look at the gene, it's clamped down 30 to 40%. They're not meditating yet, and they're not doing any of that kale. All I had them do was that one thing. Can you see now why it has to be an integrative approach? Can you see now why this is life-saving in a big way? So, as you're moving along, you are what your parents ate, you are what you ate, you are what your parents ate, and you hope your parents look like that. He's 82 from the Senior Olympics last year, and there he is doing his thing. And by the way, he started all this when he was 50, and he was a train wreck at that time. Can you say neuroplasticity? Right? There you go. You are what your grandparents ate. Turns out you are what your ancestors ate. You know, and we have tons of science that have now shown this, and we could talk about that later on. But what we found was that whatever happened to us over the years, our ancestors have gifted us with either a nightmare or not. And we have to now honor that, but we are empowered. This is so powerful. When I told Alan this and all the guys around the pool, they damn near cried. They said, you mean I can make that kind of change? I can do that just with my thoughts, nutrition, moving my body the way I am? This is amazing. I feel better already. Like her. She was given the #1 because she's 89 in the triathlon, and she's laughing because there's only one person in her age group. And my dream is to last long enough where there's one person in the age group. I can finally score a medal. Yeah, she taught me a lot, but you know, there you have it. Okay? And so, listen, let's get this right. Okay? Seriously? Remember how you used to say, eat your veggies? That's so last year. This is Aspen, isn't it? How about score some methyl donors? And these methyl donors are all coming from your greens, your kales. So when you go to Whole Foods, you go, excuse me, where's the methyl donors? And there you are, all right? Instead of this kind of crap, which is what we found everywhere, my team at Malibu Vista at Promises and Elements and my chefs are now putting together an extraordinary new program, which I've written about in the Hunger Fix. And you could actually see what we're doing to manipulate food and all the nutrients to optimize dopamine to be able to calm the chaos and the nightmare in these people who have this association between food and addiction. And so, well, I don't know. Come on, stand up, everybody, because we're kicking the fix. We're going to do kale. What do you say we get a new attitude? Come on, up you go. Yes. Yeah, I'll do questions.
Let's do one question for Pam. Then we have another little amuse-bouche. I wish we could close those doors, please. One question. Is that Lynn? Are you asking a question?
Pam, thank you so much.
One.
I'm married to an Iron Man, so I understand what you're
My
training for.
condolences.
Yes, thank you. His event is
We're all
next
a bunch of
Sunday.
crazy people.
He works out, I work for a living, so that's the way it goes.
I got to do both. It's a
There you
bitch.
go. My question to you is, what can we do to help spread this word? What we do voluntarily is helping, we down in Carbondale have organizations who help men and women get back into society after they've been through addictive behavior. The first thing they do is get hooked into the smoking, the junk food, working out, which is okay. But what we've been doing is trying to volunteer with them to help them understand nutrition is where it starts. And once they get hooked into the food part of it, everything else falls into place.
Okay, so the bottom line is I'm working with the Surgeon General right now, and I have with the prior Surgeon General in helping develop some new policies that really begin to do a number of things. Number one, it is asinine that I am a physician and nutrition is not taught. I'm a Pew Scholar in nutrition and metabolism, but I had to do that after I graduated, and it was stupid. I mean, the magazine articles say, and before you begin this, please consult your physician. Really, the most clueless person in the room you're going to consult. I mean, seriously. So I'm absolutely on a rampage across the country, getting medical schools, nursing schools, PA schools, all of them to really begin, to teach this now. For crying out loud, number one. Number two, I'm a crazy person about you walk the talk. You cannot sell this type of thing if you're not walking it. This doesn't mean you're a crazed, food police. It simply means, for crying out loud, Whole Foods. What's wrong with that? Right? But we need to be able to honor that science at the highest level. Thank God for Nora Volkow. Thank God for people like her. She's the one who snuck the food right in there in comparing food and drugs, because she knew there was something huge here, and she laid the golden egg. And with more and more research funded by Dr. Volkow, as director of the National Institute of Drug Abuse, and as a leader, pioneer in this field, then we're going to be able to get somewhere. And then we need people like myself to message it out there, to be able to get it out to people, because, dear God, what I'm really worried about is that these changes that are taking place, we pass on these epigenetic changes. They affect not one generation at a time, they affect at least two. And so we've got to get to this as soon as possible. We need to stand up, and we need to be exquisitely aggressive about this.